I was 17 when I learned that silence can be louder than screams. That night, I was in my room sketching hotel blueprints for a school project when I heard glass shatter downstairs, followed by my mother's furious voice. "You're a disgrace, Daniel. You're dragging my family's name through the mud." I froze, pencil trembling in my hand. Then came my father's voice, low and defeated. "I've done everything for this business, Claire." Everything. I ran to the hallway just in time to see him, my dad, Daniel Hayes, standing by the front door, grey-faced and hollow-eyed, a half-packed suitcase at his feet. My mum stood across from him in her silk robe, rage burning in her eyes. When he saw me, he forced a tired smile and pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry, Lila," he whispered into my hair. "I can't stay here anymore." And then he was gone. The sound of that door slamming shut was the first time I realized that love could leave just as fast as it came. I was left standing there with my 10-year-old brother, Owen, who didn't say a word, just clutched my arm and stared at the door, waiting for it to open again. It never did. Have you ever felt like you were born into the wrong family, like the people who should have loved you most were the ones holding the knife? Because that's exactly what my story is about. My family owned Hayes Hospitality, a boutique hotel empire across the Pacific Northwest. 40 properties, $60 million in assets, and one name that used to mean excellence. The founder was my grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, a woman built from grit and polished marble. She started with a lakeside lodge in Oregon and turned it into a legacy. My mother, Claire, was the face of the business, vice president of marketing, always on magazine covers, flashing her diamond smile at charity galas. My father, Daniel, was the quiet one, the operations chief who actually kept the company running. They were supposed to take the empire forward together. But Mom loved the power, not the work. Dad loved the work, not the politics. You can imagine how that ended. 3 months after my father left, Mum called a family meeting. Owen and I sat on the couch while she floated in, wearing a white designer suit and perfume that filled the entire room. "I have wonderful news," she said, her smile tight and rehearsed. "I'm getting remarried." To a man named Victor Lang, a business strategist who somehow always had one hand in his pocket and the other on someone's shoulder. He moved into our house 2 weeks later and started calling himself Stepdad before I could even memorize his last name. Victor was slick, charming, and dangerous in that way, where he always seemed like he was 5 steps ahead of everyone. He played video games with Owen. He brought me expensive sketchbooks to support my creativity. But beneath all that generosity, there was something cold, calculated, like he wasn't really seeing us. He was studying us. A few months later, Mum and Victor sat me down again. "We're expanding to Asia," Mum said, her voice full of fake excitement. "Victor and I are overseeing the project personally." "Expanding?" I asked. "What about Owen?" "What about me?" "Owen's coming, obviously," she said, waving her hand. "But you, Lila, you're almost done with school. It makes no sense to move you across the world right now." "So, where am I supposed to live?" My voice shook. "With Grandma Eleanor," she said casually. "She already agreed?" It wasn't a request. It was exile. That night I lay in bed surrounded by half-packed boxes, none of them mine, and realized I had officially become disposable. But even then, I didn't understand the full truth. Not yet. That came later. 4 years later. Living with Grandma Eleanor was like moving from a hurricane into still water. She was strict, wise, and terrifyingly perceptive. The kind of woman who could silence a boardroom with a single look. But she loved me, not loudly, not with hugs and sugar cookies, but with something deeper, stability. I went to the University of Washington to study architecture. I spent nights buried in design software, dreaming of sustainable hotels that connected to the landscape instead of dominating it. Mom barely called. A text on Christmas, a missed call on my birthday. Sometimes months went by without a word. Then, on my 21st birthday, Grandma asked me to meet her in her study, the same study where every major deal in our family had ever been signed. "Sit down, Lila," she said, voice calm but heavy. I obeyed, my heart thudding. "I've been watching you," she said. "You don't just look at buildings, you understand them. You have what your father had." She pushed a black leather folder across the desk. "Happy birthday." Inside were property deeds, trust papers, and something that looked like company ownership certificates. "What is this?" I whispered. "It's the company," she said simply. "Hayes Hospitality now belongs to you." My throat closed up. That can't be right. Mum and Victor are not in charge, she said sharply. They've been running a vanity expansion in Singapore, a project I never approved. But the heart of this business, the hotels, the land, the legacy, that's yours. I stared at her. Why me? Why now? She leaned back. Because I waited too long. I wanted to believe Claire could grow into a leader, but she's chosen ambition over family again and again. I won't let her gamble this family's future away. Consider this not a gift, Leela, a correction. Her words hung in the air like thunder. A correction. Before I left, she said one more thing. Call your father. Talk to him. There are things you don't know. It took me a week to find the courage. When I finally called, he sounded shocked, but happy. We met at a small cafe overlooking the Sound. He looked older, more fragile, but his eyes still had that quiet steadiness I remembered. He listened as I told him everything: the company transfer, Grandma's decision, Victor's name. When I finished, he set his coffee down and said, "There's something you need to know about your mother." And then he told me the story that shattered everything I thought I knew. He hadn't left because of work or stress. He'd left because Mom and Victor had been having an affair, long before Dad ever packed his suitcase. "I found out by accident," he said quietly. Emails, hotel receipts, and worse, financial discrepancies. Victor wasn't just a consultant, he was laundering company funds through shell accounts. Your mother signed off on it. I felt sick. "You mean they framed you?" He nodded slowly. "They did. They made it look like I was embezzling. I could have fought it, but she threatened to drag you and Owen into it. Said she'd tell everyone I was unstable, that I'd lose custody. I couldn't let that happen." He looked at me, eyes glassy. So I left. The cafe felt too small for the weight of what I'd just heard. For years, I'd believed my father was weak. Now I realized he'd been protecting us the whole time. 2 days after that meeting, the past came knocking. Literally. When I opened the front door, I froze. My mother stood there, dressed in beige designer clothes and fake warmth. Victor was beside her, smiling like a shark. "Lila, sweetheart." Mum swept forward and hugged me tight. "Oh, darling, you look wonderful." She smelled like perfume and desperation. "We heard the good news," she said, stepping inside without being invited. "Grandma made you owner of the company. Isn't that incredible?" Behind her, Victor was already glancing around like he owned the place. "Your mother and I were just talking," he said. "This could be a perfect opportunity for a family partnership." Mum clasped her hands together. "Exactly. You'll come live with us. We'll run the business together, the way it was always meant to be." I took a step back. "No, Mom. I'm staying here. I have school and Grandma." Her smile flickered. "Lila, don't be unreasonable. We can handle the responsibility better than you." "No," I said. "You had your chance." Victor's tone sharpened. "You're making a mistake, kid. Business requires adults. Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen from it," I said quietly. Mum's face went pale. "What did you just say?" "I talked to Dad," I said. "I know about the fraud." "The affair. The way you framed him. You didn't just lose him, Mum. You lost your integrity." The silence that followed was explosive. Her mask fell off in an instant. "You ungrateful little brat," she screamed. "After everything I sacrificed." "That man was a coward. I made this company what it is. That's enough, a voice said from the doorway. Grandma Eleanor. She had been standing there the whole time. She stepped forward slowly, eyes fixed on my mother. Claire Hayes, she said, her tone calm but cold. You will not raise your voice in my house. Mum spun toward her. Mother, she's lying. You can't believe. The only thing I can't believe, Grandma interrupted, is how far you've fallen. You used my company as a weapon against your own family. You used my granddaughter as a pawn. And now you come crawling back for what? Money? Control? Victor swallowed hard. Mrs. Hayes, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Grandma snapped. There's evidence. And my attorneys will be in touch regarding your unauthorized financial dealings. Victor's face drained of colour. Mum's voice cracked. You can't just throw us out. This company is mine. No, Grandma said, her voice like steel. It's Lila's. Always has been Mum's rage twisted into something uglier, desperation. You'll regret this, she hissed, but her voice trembled. Get out, Grandma said softly. They left in silence. The door slammed, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. A month later, Grandma's lawyers uncovered the full extent of the fraud. Victor wasn't just corrupt. He was a professional con artist with 3 aliases and 2 pending investigations. He had used my mother to push through fake expansion deals, diverting $8.4 million into offshore accounts. When confronted with the evidence, Mum broke down completely. She claimed Victor tricked her. Maybe that was true, but the court didn't care. She was listed as a co-conspirator. My father filed for custody of Owen. I was in the courtroom that day. Mum sat on the stand, crying like a rehearsed tragedy. She told the judge my father was unstable, that he'd abandoned us. Her lawyer painted her as a victim of manipulation. Then our lawyer stood up and quietly dropped a binder on the table. Inside, Victor's false identities, wire transfers, emails signed by my mother. When he finished reading, the courtroom was silent. Mum's sobs stopped, her mask crumbled. She stared at the floor, hollow-eyed, as the judge ruled in my father's favour. Owen ran into Dad's arms after the verdict, and for the first time in years my little brother smiled without fear. A week later, Dad called me. She came by, he said softly. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Your mother. She said she wanted to make amends, said Victor used her, asked if we could start over. My chest tightened. And what did you say? He let out a weary laugh. I told her no. That chapter's over. I told her that ship didn't just sail, it sank. I smiled through tears. Good. Months passed, the legal battles ended, the noise died down. Dad took over as interim CEO of Hayes Hospitality, bringing integrity back into the boardroom. Owen started playing soccer again. Grandma smiled more often. And me? I graduated top of my class with a thesis project on sustainable hotel design, one that caught the attention of a major eco-development firm. One Sunday night, after dinner at Grandma's, I unrolled the blueprints on the table. It's called Haven, I said nervously, a hotel that produces zero waste and uses 100% renewable energy. The next generation of what you started, Dad leaned in, studying the plans. A slow smile spread across his face. This, he said quietly, is the future, Lila. I looked around the table, at my father, my brother, my grandmother. This wasn't the family I started with. It was smaller, scarred, imperfect, but it was real. It was earned. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a discarded daughter in someone else's story. I felt like the architect of my own, because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to rebuild what others tried to destroy. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's the start of strength. If this story inspired you, drop a heart in the comments. Subscribe for more real-life stories about finding freedom, courage, and self-worth.